Don't be saying, Kiki, do you love me, while I'm trying to do this vlog. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Glorify, and thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Go ahead, do me a huge favor, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that bell. That way you're notified every single time that we upload. Also, go ahead and share this video. Don't be afraid, because I promise, somebody needs to hear this. Alright, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. A few weeks ago, I wrote a vlog entitled How the Unclean Saved a Nation, and of course, I'll go ahead and I'll link that in the description box. It's just essentially about 4 lepers that made a series of personal decisions that would end up restarting Israel's economy. The reason I love this story is because it's not your typical hero story. It's not as though they heard the audible voice of God and they came swords blazing. It's about personal choices that they made. And I guess before we could even get into it, there's some things that we need to know. Like, what is a leper? A leper is obviously someone that's contracted leprosy. Leprosy is a highly contagious skin disease. It often discolorizes the skin, would turn skin completely white. It would also, in really severe cases, it would cause you to lose members, fingers, toes, even legs. Sometimes you see pictures of people's noses coming off. And in biblical days, it didn't get much worse than lepers. Lepers were not allowed to live in the town or around anyone that didn't already have the disease. So they were often rounded up and forced to live on the outskirts of town in inhumane conditions. Alright, so it's 2018. Obviously, most of us live in the U.S. and leprosy is not something that we have to deal with or that we see very often. However, we do see social leprosy. We do see that society tells a group of people that may be different for whatever reason, or may not look up to their standards, or may not believe in the way that they believe, that the majority believes, and tells them that you're so different that you can't be with us. You know, you can't sit at the table with us type situation. I know that in my skin, in this brown skin, obviously, if you're one of those people that really don't see color, I don't know if you know, but I'm an African-American black woman, and on top of that, I have the audacity to have dreads. I know that I've been discriminated against, been the recipient of prejudice more times than I can count, received so many dirty looks, not been offered jobs I know I was qualified for, or turned down because of my hairstyle, because of my race, because of my gender even. So obviously these are things that I can't control. I can't control my gender nor my skin color. Maybe I could change my hair, but why? Why should I have to? But because of some of these things, society tells me that I can't be certain things, that I can't do certain things, and that they just won't accept certain behaviors and different things from me because of the way that I look. Now, everyone is not a black female. Everyone doesn't have dreads, but I believe that no matter your race, no matter if you have brown hair, blonde hair, straight hair, curly hair, you're wearing an afro, you're wearing cornrows, your hair is straight, it's permed, it's natural, you're bald-headed, whatever your personal preference in terms of the way that you look or your race, obviously at some point in your life, you've been ostracized because of the way you look, or something you believe, or something that you do that's just a little bit different than society tells you it can be. I think in that way we can all relate. Alright, so at the beginning of the story, we're at about 2 Kings 7 and 3, and it says, "Now there were 4 men who were lepers at the entrance of the gate, and they said to one another, 'Why are we sitting here until we die? If we say, let us enter the city, the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we sit here, we also die. But now come, let us go over to the camp of the Syrians. If they spare our lives, we shall live, but if they kill us, we shall but die.'" So essentially, I feel as though they're just sitting here and they're like, if we stay here, we are going to die. Okay, now if we go to the city, we're probably going to die there. And if we go to the Syrian camp, they're probably going to kill us too. But hey, there's a chance, even if it's a small chance, that they might say, hey, you know, you're already lepers. We're going to have some mercy on you and we're not going to kill you. But one thing that they do know for sure is that if they stay, they are going to die. And I feel as though even as I'm talking right now, that there's somebody that's in a hopeless situation. There's somebody that's in a situation that seems like it just can't get any worse. Yet and still, for some reason, they stay. They made a conscious decision that if they stay, they're going to die, and they've made a decision to stay. I would say to that person, if that person is you, go. You might be unsure about what's in front of you. You might be unsure what's to the side of you. You might not be sure about what's going to happen. If you go somewhere else, you might not even be sure if it's going to be better, but one thing that you are sure of, if you stay, you're going to die. And I want to encourage you right now to go. All right, here's a little backstory on Israel at this time. Israel is in an extreme drought, an extreme famine, okay? There's no water, therefore there's no rain, therefore there's no water, therefore there's no food, there's no crops. The animals are dying. Israel is shooting bad, really bad. And on top of that, Syrian camps have basically just been popping up all over the place. Syria is attempting to occupy Israel, and they are essentially at war in one of the worst times, not greatest times, worst times of Israel's history. And on top of that, we have these 4 lepers that, of course, through the drought and the famine, also have leprosy. Continuing to 2 Kings 7 and 5, they say, "So they arose at twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. But when they came to the edge of the camp of the Syrians, behold, there was no one there." I love this verse because we just leave the lepers. They're already discussing what could happen to them. They're already thinking like, oh, the Syrians might show us mercy, but little did they know that God had already removed the Syrians. I feel like we forget that God is God. We want to make him human so bad. We want to make him need a cell phone just like us. He can't get anything done unless he chooses to use our hands and our feet. But the truth of the matter is God is God, and that he is everywhere all at the same time. That the God that was right there with the lepers is even with you right now. So while you're sitting there and you're counting all the costs and you're figuring out what it would take to do this and what you would need and what obstacle was in the way, God is saying even to you now that the obstacle has already been removed. All right, and verse 6 really tells us what happened and how God removed the Syrians. So it says, "For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians hear a sound of chariots and of horses, the great sound of an army, so that they said to one another, Behold, the king of Israel has hired against us the king of Hittites and the king of Egypt to come against us. So they fled away in the twilight and abandoning their tents, their horses, their donkeys, leaving the camp as it was, and fled for their lives." That's insane, because as the lepers were getting up at twilight, right, mustering up all their strength, all their courage, all the boldness they could to basically go and grovel before the Syrians and ask them to spare their lives, the Syrians are running for their lives, because although it's only 4 lepers on the way, it sounds like an army. It sounds like a battalion coming towards them. It sounds like not only is the king of Israel coming, but he's coming with an entire army. This is such encouragement for even me, because it might just be me. You guys might just see me, but even though it's just me in front of this camera, I know that because God sent me to do this, there's an army of angels with me, and I know that it's touching and reaching the people that it needs to be. Even though I feel absolutely ridiculous in front of this camera, it just gives me the courage to know that although it might just seem like me, like it might have just seemed like it was 4 little sickly lepers, but to other people it would appear that it was angels and an army coming. 8 continues and says, "And when these lepers came to the edge of the camp, they went into a tent and ate and drank, and they carried off silver and gold and clothing and went and hid them." So this is really funny, because now he doesn't tell us if this took a matter of days, if this was the next day, if it was several days, several hours, or the next month. But we do know that just a day or so ago, the lepers were in a completely hopeless situation, feeling like no matter what they did, they were going to die. Poor, hungry, starved, and now a day or so later, they're not hungry anymore. It says they ate and they drank. This is better than everybody else in Israel, because we have to remember that there's a huge famine, a huge drought, so nobody's eating, nobody's drinking, people are scavenging all over the streets. Even the kingdom at this point in time is hungry. So now the lepers, they're doing better than everybody else. And not only did they eat and they drink, but it says they got silver and gold, and they went and hid it. Like we're not going to be broke for too much longer. We're not going to just keep what we can carry. We're going to take some and hide it and save it. So when I was looking at this verse, I was like, okay, God, what are you saying to me right now? And I felt like he was saying, you get yours. I feel like oftentimes we do one or two things. We get the word of the Lord, or God is doing something great in us, and before we fully received it for ourselves, we try to give it to other people. I feel like in this verse, what he was saying to me, and I'm assuming someone else, is like, get you. Let him do whatever he's doing in you. Let him do it fully. Like, you eat and drink. The lepers would have been no good to anyone if they continued in the state that they were. The lepers wouldn't have been able to do what they're about to do if they were still malnourished, sick, barely making it. First they had to eat and drink, and they gathered silver and gold for themselves. And verse 9 says, and then they said to one another, because now they're starting to be convicted, we are not doing right. This day is a day of good news. If we are silent and wait until the morning, punishment will overtake us. Now therefore, come, let us go and tell the king's household. So they came and called to the gatekeepers of the city and told them, we came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no one to be seen or heard there, nothing but the horses tired and the donkeys tied, and the tents as they were. Then the gatekeepers called out, and it was told to the king's household. Like about the lepers is that once they did eat and drink, once they had secured enough for them, once they were no longer malnourished, bleeding out, sick, dying, that they were convicted, and they said, this is too good to keep to ourselves. So what I find is either we give things too early, before God has had a chance to completely give to us, before we've received things for ourselves, or we try to keep it a secret. I see too many people keeping the secret of salvation to themselves, as though Jesus is this great, awesome gift that's so good for themselves. We know that the gospel is not something that we can contain and we can't keep to ourselves. So I love that the lepers, once they ate and drank their fill, once they were back up to health, and once they were able to continue, they went and told the king. Now we can continue reading, and we'll see how the king responds and what happens, but what I can tell you happens is that essentially this camp of the Syrians, the tent, the food, the silver, and the gold, restarts the economy. That day they were able to buy and sell in the markets again. That's having money moving through the kingdom again. That's saving Israel from essentially dying. So the choices of these 4 sickly lepers, the people that the society had disregarded and threw away, restarted the entire economy. Even reading this now, I'm thinking about how big that is and how amazing. And I wonder if the lepers ever knew that the choices that they made were responsible for Israel being able to continue, or if the people ever knew that it was because of the lepers and them finding the tent in Syria. Finding the Syrian tent. I think that we make personal choices all the time, and we think that it only affects us, but we're not God, and we don't know his bigger plan. We don't know how the smallest decision that we make, how it might affect even the United States. We just don't know. So I'm reminded to remember that although I seem so small and so insignificant, my God is big, and his plan exceeds anything that I could dream of. So you listening to this, you watching this, you're so much bigger than you know. You're so much more relevant, and no matter if you feel ostracized, thrown away, unimportant, I say to you, the way that God spoke to these lepers, go, move, do it, make the next step. Don't stay there and die, because God has greater for you. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for listening. I hope you learned something. And if you did, leave me a comment. Tell me what you learned. Tell me your take on it. Give me any advice you have, and keep coming back. Check us out and read the blog as well. All right, I'll see you guys next time.